Frontier's gotta be one of the weirdest games I've ever played. At first glance, it looks like a cobbled together mess of ideas, a desperate attempt to appeal to modern gaming with an out-of-place, ultra-realistic open world, made by a team who's had nothing but misses for over a decade. I don't think anyone expected Frontiers to be as well received as it was. It might not be the highest bar to clear, but I genuinely think this is one of the best Sonic games to date. Running around the open zone, tracking down collectibles, taking down enemies, taking in a story that actually feels like it had some thought put into it. I think Sonic teams finally found their winning formula. Open zone Sonic has a ton of potential. Frontiers isn't the franchise-defining masterpiece a lot of us hope for, but it's a good first attempt at an open world Sonic, and most importantly, a solid blueprint for the future. I want to take a look back at Frontiers and see how Sonic Team can improve upon this new foundation. What could they add? What could they change? What needs to be done to push this series in the right direction? Let's explore the potential of open zone Sonic. The most important thing for any platformer, especially Sonic, has to be the movement. Game feel is the foundation on which everything should be built. Thankfully, Frontiers has some pretty solid movement. I'd argue it's the best Sonic's felt in 3D, if not second only to Adventure. It helps that pretty much everything can be tweaked in the settings. If you don't mess with the preset movement, you're free to change it. Don't like how Sonic loses every ounce of speed each time he jumps? Turn that jump deceleration all the way down. Now you're speeding across the map as God intended. Each zone has a bunch of level design that you can use to almost craft your own Sonic level. Every time you set a waypoint, you're committing yourself to a level of your own making. The movement has this amazing sense of flow that makes the simple act of running around the map a joy. I can't tell you the amount of times I've queued up Frontiers just to run around the map aimlessly. That's how you know you've got some solid movement, but it could still use some work. For one, I hate how they implemented the spin dash. As fun as it can be, it clashes with the existing movement. Being added in an update didn't do it any favors. It's mapped to the same button as one of the attacks, and it renders the triple jump drop dash completely redundant. All for what is pretty much just a slightly different boost, barely taking advantage of what makes rolling fun. I'd have it so tapping L2 causes Sonic to start rolling into a ball. This will make it easier for him to gain speed while going downhill. He can still drop and spin dash, but they don't give him an infinite burst of speed, just that initial boost the moves are known for. Gaining speed through rolling would have a higher speed cap than the boost. You'd use it for the same reason you'd use it in the classics, to gain speed going downhill. That way rolling serves its own unique function separate from the boost. I'd expect it to be unlocked from the start and for the world to be somewhat built with it in mind. More on that later. Do I really need to explain why momentum is a must-have for open zone Sonic? Y'all swore on everything that Frontiers didn't need momentum. Y'all really made momentum a slur. But seeing how many people enjoyed rail jumping and how many more cheered when they patched in the ability to maintain speed during a jump, I think it's safe to say we all want more free-form movement. I'm not gonna say Sonic needs momentum, but it has only ever made a game better when he does. I just want Sonic to gain speed going downhill, lose speed going uphill, and for rolling to accentuate that. The fact that Mario makes better use of rolling physics than a character who was literally designed to roll is crazy to me. I'm just using levels as an example. Don't take this literally, but I have it so Sonic starts off at level 75 boost speed, and through rolling he could reach speed similar to what 150 would look like. But like I said, I'm just using those levels as an example. I'd completely axe the leveling system for the next game. Like the puzzles, you can tell it's just here to follow established open world tropes without really thinking about how they'd work in a Sonic game. Really think about it. What's the point of upgrading speed? You can side-loop and be at top speed 5 minutes into the game. What's the point of leveling up your ring count? For boss fights that are already too easy with more than 400 rings? Those two definitely gotta go. As for attack and defense, just make the enemies on each island get progressively harder, and let us unlock more effective moves as we progress. The rest of Sonic's moves can stay. The drop makes for quick, vertical movement. It's one of those moves you really don't miss until it's gone, if Dream Team's anything to go by. I'm actually a huge fan of this game's trick system. I couldn't tell you how many times I've tricked off Aranos' giant triangle thing. I'd definitely keep the side loop. Nobody wants to stop and press a button to queue up a challenge. Just draw a quick circle and you're good. It's the perfect move for a high-speed game. Other than that, all I can really ask for is more polished gameplay animation. I don't want to see Sonic running midair on my PS5. Keep that stuff in the 90s. Good animation does wonders for game feel. Don't be afraid to put in some squash and stretch in there. Really take advantage of Sonic's design. I'd love if they took some notes from something like Sonic and the Fallen Star and have it so that when drop dashing, Sonic will prep his body into a roll as he falls. Stuff like that would go a long way in making the game feel more polished. But what's good movement if you don't got good level design? Next up, let's talk about the open zone design. I'm not even gonna lie, Frontiers world design is atrocious, at least visually. It feels very Mario Maker in the sense that they had a stock background to work with and then they just placed a bunch of pre-made assets on it and called it a day, probably because that's literally what they did. I don't know where I read this, but I heard that for most of production they didn't plan to have the open world level design at all. It was literally just gonna be combat, puzzles, and you'd have to look to Cyberspace for your platforming fix. Yeah, that would have been bad. So I get why it's like this, but you can't tell me this is ideal. It looks like a fan game built by a group of amateurs, not a commercial project helmed by industry professionals. I can't tell if the pop-in makes it better or worse. On one hand, you can't see the absolute mess of visual design when you're more than a few yards away, but on the other, sometimes you can't see the level design you're supposed to interact with. Now that they know it works, I want them to completely change their approach to the world design. Design the world with the level design in mind. Instead of putting a black ramp in the middle of a naturalistic environment, make a hill. Instead of floating blocks, there can be a giant tree with branches as platforms. The rails can be tree vines that stretch across the zone. While I'm on the subject, they gotta do something about these zone aesthetics. Even when you ignore the clashing visuals, these islands still lack the creativity I look for in Sonic. Oh wow, I can't wait to run around realistic grassland, desert, and mountain. It's boring and doesn't take advantage of Sonic's unique style. I say ditch the ultra realism. Give us worlds that are weird. I want to see loop-de-loops, half pipes, ramps, weird geography that lets us use momentum to our advantage, stuff that really screams Sonic. Give us level themes that make you excited to enter a new zone. I remember getting so hyped to see what the last two islands would end up looking like. I imagined Rhea as this mini archipelago with warm colored islands and Aranos as this snowy wasteland. Maybe one of the zones could take place in cyberspace. There's so much potential there. And that was just thinking inside the box Frontiers established. I'd much rather explore an open zone Studiopolis, Eggman Land, Tropical Resort. Man, I'll take Green Hill at this point. I didn't mean that, Sega. I'm not myself today. Don't do it. Nah, for real though. They'd be smart to look at the classics for inspiration. These games are filled with creative level themes and imaginative visuals. I'd love to explore something like that in 3D. We can do so much better than these generic, washed out wastelands. I need both of these to make a change. I'd hate for the next game to double down on the Mario Maker level design and refuse to embrace a more creative art direction. You know, I hate to say it, but Sonic Speed Sim, the Sonic Roblox game, is closer to what I'd want in terms of world design. And heck, movement too. I think they married the boost and spin dash pretty well here. If you ever wonder how they make an open zone filled with level design without ruining the visuals, look no further. I'm actually gonna go insane. Why is the Sonic Roblox game more visually cohesive than Frontiers? Dream Team 2, y'all can't keep letting these low budget side games show you up. Y'all can't let this slide. Aesthetics aside, the level design ain't too bad. Nothing too crazy or memorable, but it helps contribute to that flow I mentioned earlier. A lot of the joys of movement come from bouncing from level design to level design as fast as you can. Just find a way to bridge the gap between level aesthetics and design and we're good. I definitely ditch the 2D sections though. They remove a lot of the fun of traversal and aren't nearly as enjoyable as they are in games where they're the sole focus. They got no reason to be here other than to pad out an already long game. Ditch the puzzles too. I think each open zone challenge should focus on player movement, whether that's through platforming challenges, time trials, or otherwise. Nobody wants to slowly turn statues or solve complex mirror puzzles in a Sonic game. The action chain challenges could just be incorporated into that group of progression. Those were surprisingly engaging and really took advantage of how Frontier's movement was. But we definitely don't need 10 of them per island, maybe like 3 on each corner of the map so they feel less repetitive. My ideal open zone would have a combination of those, and they naturally get harder with each island. The Final Horizon had the right idea, linking most of the map completion to platforming challenges. When it comes to zone design, the only other thing I can ask for is more hidden areas that you'd have to go out of your way to find. I want the next game to have a little more exploration as opposed to just running from task to task, as fun as that is. When it comes to zone aesthetics, I don't really have anything specific in mind, but I think we all want to explore an open zone city. That's the dream right there. Exploring something like Sunset City from IDW would be dope. You could give the NPCs interesting dialogue to flesh out the story and make each zone feel alive. You could even have cameos of the more obscure characters. Like imagine running around and out of the corner of your eye you spot Lanolin or Jewel from IDW, just walking around waiting for you to say what's up. I swear IDW gives us such a richly realized version of this world that the games have yet to tap into. I'm hoping future games can continue to bridge that gap. I want them to have some sort of shop where you can use rings to actually buy clothes. I think Frontiers really dropped the ball by reserving customization for DLC that you have to equip in the main menu. You could have easily had like a vendor Coco that sold different outfits. You obviously gotta have the soap shoes in there, but I think it'd be cool if we had the Rider's outfit too. You could have Chip's bracelet, the little sailor outfit he wore in Murder of Sonic. You could have the tracksuit he wore in SA2's battle mode. You could have Excalibur's gauntlet, and honestly, just give my boy some Jordans. Strike a deal with Nike or something. Find a way to make it work. Feel free to go crazy with it. Everyone likes a little customization. Instead of a jukebox, Sonic could have access to a radio where on top of being able to listen to a bunch of iconic Sonic songs as you collect them, he could also listen to Dawn and Night's radio station from IDW. They could be a nice bit of world building or maybe just a source of comic relief. If the game has some sort of world-ending conflict, they could give insight into what the rest of the world is going through. Again, blurring the lines between the games and IDW. And with that, I think I covered most of what I'd want to see in general open zone gameplay. More creative zone aesthetics made with the level design in mind, with more of a focus on exploration, player movement, and world building. But that's not all the open zone has going for it. Let's talk combat. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Honestly, I'm not much of a combat guy at all. The most experience I have with those types of games is Smash Bros, and I don't even think that counts. I know very little about what makes for good combat, and apparently neither did Sonic Team. Ask most people and they'll say Frontiers had a pretty shallow combat system. But I don't know, I thought it was fun to wail on enemies as one of my favorite characters in fiction, with all the flashy effects and satisfying feedback. What can I say, my monkey brain likes seeing Sonic do cool stuff. So for the most part, I thought the combat was fine. Most of the fun came from how the bosses were designed. The combat was more of a flashy homing attack if anything. But that's not to say it can't be better. A lot of the complaints you'll see mention how it's just a bunch of mini cutscenes. Apparently the combat from Final Horizon kinda rectified this. At first I had a hard time understanding that because I thought these three sucked to fight with. It didn't help that each character had like 2 moves and were put against the hardest enemies in the game. It felt like trying to fight Frontier's enemies with characters barely more advanced than the Force's avatar. But after playing around with Tails and Amy a little bit, I started to see the potential. With a couple more moves and enemies that don't take you existing personally, I could see something like this working pretty well. Their combat really highlights how button mashy and cutscene heavy Sonic's is. Plus this more freeform type of combat just fits Sonic more. He shouldn't be constantly locked to some pointless automation. He should be bouncing around crowds of enemies like the force of nature he is. This goes without saying, but make the parry time. That alone would have made the game so much better. It don't gotta be a single frame or nothing crazy like that. Maybe just a half-second parry so it's actually fun to pull off. It's kind of a nitpick, but since when was Sonic an electric-based speedster? I thought it was so much cooler when he was, again, this force of nature, the embodiment of the wind and the freedom that it represents. Now he's just a furry Barry Allen, throwing out random energy blasts, rocking an electric aura. It's fine for movie Sonic, that's a separate universe where they really hone in on Sonic's superhero inspiration. But I hope they go back on that choice for the games. I remember I used to get Sonic up to level 98 just so I could run around without all the electric effects. It felt so much more, I don't know, Sonic-like to me. Like I said, it's a nitpick. It doesn't really matter, I just thought I'd bring it up. When it comes to boss fights, I'd keep the spectacle but ditch Super Sonic for most of the game. Don't get me wrong, I love the Titan battles. Super Sonic ascending into the sky to face Giganto as the opening riffs of Undefeatable echo in the background is easily one of the sickest moments in the series. But I feel like the more you use Super Sonic, the less special he becomes. Create boss fights that deliver on that spectacle while still creating a mechanically rich fight, all in Sonic's base form. I'd probably just have 2 Super Sonic fights, one that kicks off the game and one to cap it off. I thought the normal boss fights were pretty cool. They do get a little repetitive after 100 hours, but for the most part, I thought they were a ton of fun. Stuff like the shark has to go though. Sitting through a minute of QTEs is actually the opposite of fun, and I actively avoid running into them. And please add the option to get rid of the obnoxious opening text that each boss has. It's really annoying when you're just trying to move around the map and one cuts off your flow for a pointless introduction. Like, yeah, I know what a caterpillar is. Can I play the game now? Or you can just, yeah. Nah, that's fine. I'll talk more about combat when I get to the playable characters, but for now we gotta talk about the most polarizing part of an already divisive game. I'm very mixed on Cyberspace. The movement feels stiff compared to the open zones and slow compared to the games it's taking level design from. And the reuse of level themes has really gotten old. So much for a bold new direction. This is the 5th game in a row to start with Green Hill. Despite that, I think Frontiers would be worse off without Cyberspace. Once you get used to the wonky movement, you can actually have a lot of fun speedrunning these. If done right, these more traditional bite-sized levels could be a nice change of pace from the open zone. First off, I'd have it so next game's Cyberspace has completely new level aesthetics and design. That should go without saying. A new game should have new stuff. The levels could play off the zone's aesthetic. Say you got a zone like Sunset City. Boom, you got a beach level right there. Here you got a rooftop level. You can make a level involving the sewers or this bridge. Pretty much what Adventure did with its hub worlds. You could also have it so that, I don't know, there's tears in reality, and to fix them, Sonic has to run through a level. You could make the levels these weird, trippy, special stage-like areas, completely separate from the open zone. As long as the levels are unique and have their own identity, I don't care which route they take. And no more 2D exclusive levels. The only fun part of Cyberspace is completely breaking the levels to get a better time. 2D strips that away for, again, something that doesn't come close to what it's trying to imitate. Leave 2D to the 2D games. I'd want it to control pretty much exactly the same as the open zone. Let us move the camera, perform tricks, dodge, all that. I thought the level design was pretty decent. Again, none too crazy, but not much to really critique. Most of the time it gets the job done and serves as a fun playground to speedrun through. The original stages were definitely the highlights. I'd probably have longer, less abundant levels so each feels a little more memorable. Instead of 7 1-minute stages, you could have 4 or 5 2-minute ones. You could sprinkle in some character specific stages or level segments for each playable character. So someone like Amy would have more of a focus on platforming, while Knuckles would have more of a focus on climbing. Don't go all SA2 with it. At the end of the day, speedrunning is still the main appeal. But don't be afraid to include more gameplay elements unique to specific characters. I think Dream Team executed this concept pretty well. I'm probably one of the few people that likes when S ranks are exclusively tied to how fast you clear the level, as long as beating the level fast is actually a challenge. I liked how tough 1-2 was to S rank the first time around. around. It'd be cool if every stage was like that. Make the timing extremely tight. If someone gets an S rank, they have truly mastered a level. The reward for S ranking everything should be substantial, and that goes for open zone completion too. Maybe for beating all of Sonic's cyberspace levels, you can get a special cosmetic, maybe a metal Sonic skin with unique animations, and by 100%ing every zone, including cyberspace, we could get a new post-game area to run around in. Obviously it'd be a little smaller, but how dope would it be to explore an open zone Angel Island? Something that really makes you want to go for 100%. I feel like Sonic's all about, replayability, playing levels over and over and over again to truly master it, so there should be a substantial reward for doing that. Anyways, I'm getting off track. In short, my ideal cyberspace would have original level themes, original level design, and controls more consistent with the rest of the game. Before I move on to the story, I wanted to speak on the music. Honestly, I don't got much to say. Otani is a master of his craft. Mirroring its gameplay, Frontier's soundtrack is an incredible blend of wildly different music styles. You've got the more low-key instrumental to accompany the open zone, managing to give off a somber vibe without sounding boring. Theme of the Starfall Islands, Kronos' fifth movement, and all of the Final Horizon tracks were particular highlights for me. The EDM tracks help give these monotonous cyberspace levels some semblance of identity. Hype Street and Fog Funk go crazy. And of course, you've got some of the craziest and most memorable boss themes I've ever heard. Their reputation speaks for itself. That's not to mention the sound design, which is—
Oh my God, bro, is dick riding all you do?
No, I'm saying
you literally got that nigga dick in your mouth right now. I see it.
I'm saying the shot was okay.
All right.
Alright, bro.
I trust Otani's musical talent with my life. Keep him as sound director and we're in good hands. Alright, that's enough meat riding for one video. Let's talk about the story. All things considered, I'd say Frontier's story is pretty solid. I'm not the biggest fan of the overly somber tone, and too many cutscenes are just two characters staring at each other telepathically mourning a group of rocks. But at least the somber tone fits the theme of the game. I wouldn't want another Forces where everyone's laughing and telling bad jokes during what is supposed to be a time of war. Frontiers picks a tone and sticks with it, and I respect it for that. It helps that the cast feel like actual people and not just one-note background characters. Amy is as fierce as she is protective, always standing up for what she believes in. She's not some crazy fangirl. She and Sonic have a genuine friendship that shines through every conversation they have. Knuckles isn't this walking joke. He's the unyielding guardian of the Master Emerald, and his prequel animation is one of the best pieces of Sonic storytelling out there. I wish they added this as some sort of unlockable in one of the updates. It sets the tone really well. Him and Sonic have this fun rivalry going on. Knuckles' hard-headedness contrasting perfectly with Sonic's signature sass. And they finally redeemed my boy Tails. They explained his inconsistency with the fact that at the end of the day, he's just a kid. He's going to crack under pressure. He's going to make mistakes. As Sonic puts it, that's just part of growing up. And don't get me started on the sibling dynamic these two got going, with Sonic calling him little bro. Say what you want about Sonic's stories not mattering. To me, there will always be value in a well-crafted narrative. I think games are at their best when the story and gameplay work together to create an unforgettable experience. Frontiers is far from perfect. I wouldn't even call its story great, but the characterization and dialogue is a huge step in the right direction. To me, IDW is the gold standard for Sonic storytelling. The characters, tone, world building, it's exactly what I want from this series, and Frontiers feels one step closer to that. I like that they were willing to try something new with the somber tone, but I hope the next game gives us something a little more lighthearted, something akin to SA2 Unleashed or, again, IDW. An exciting story that's not afraid to get serious when the situation calls for it. When it comes to voice acting, I'd say it's mostly pretty solid. Cindy Robinson really took her place as the best voice for Amy. She nails both the cutesy girly side of Amy and the more serious emotional side. Tails and Eggman were great as usual, but Knuckles and Sonic are debatable. Okay, so Knuckles sounds pretty good in Divergence. Then you play the game and he sounds like a high school jock, like he's trying to make his voice deeper. It's distracting. I hope the voice direction is more like the prologue going forward. This might be a little controversial, but I actually really like Roger's performance as Sonic. The deeper voice sounds a lot more natural. A lot of that annoying nasalness is gone.
That's not fear. I ran all the way over here. And you haven't left an impression. I don't know anything about you, not even your name.
Oh well, some direction is better than none. Here we go.
And honestly, I think it's kinda cool. He sounds older, more experienced, yet still retaining that Sonic snarkiness. I'd be happy if they kept this direction for future games. People hear this and think, oh, it's too deep, it doesn't sound like the character, but honestly, the character sounds annoying. I don't think Ben Schwartz or Devin Mack do a bad job, but I've never been a fan of that kind of voice for Sonic, where they really play into the hyperactive teen side of his character. It's iconic, but it's grating. I prefer Roger's more laid-back performance. Cutscene animation definitely needs work. I don't know if they gotta use motion capture capture or just get more animators on board, but I want to see something on par with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Seems like a random comparison, but whenever I see that game's animation and cinematography, I think, yeah, this is what Sonic should be striving for. I don't have any story pitches or none like that. Gun to my head and I gotta pitch one, I'd say keep diving deeper into the Chaos Emerald lore. Some alien race invades Earth looking for the Chaos Emerald. Give us an opening cutscene that blends into a Super Sonic fight, starting the game off with a bang. Eventually Sonic gets defeated and he's knocked out of his super form and falls back to Earth. Emeralds scattering across the galaxy. The aliens start their search and Sonic and Co go after them. Game has us going from planet to planet, each being an open zone hiding a Chaos Emerald. I like the idea that the emeralds are these all-powerful jewels that are well known throughout the cosmos. Anyone that knows about them wants them. And at this point, they've been on Earth for a minute, so I'd expect some aliens to pull up one of these days. Unlike the Black Arms, this new civilization would be a little more intelligent. They'd clearly know a lot more about the jewels than Sonic in them. I really want them to keep doing stuff at the end. It has potential to become a genuinely great villain if they play their cards right. Maybe this civilization worships it, and they want to use the emeralds to bring back its true form. Again, that's just something I thought of on the spot. The rest of this video isn't really made with that story pitch in mind. As long as we get an engaging story with cool set pieces and well-made cutscenes, I'll be happy. Now before we wrap this up, let's talk multiple playable characters. I love the idea of multiple playable characters in Sonic, each offering their own spin on the core gameplay, adding more depth and variety to what is hopefully an already fun and replayable experience. Story-wise, it shines a much-needed spotlight on characters other than Sonic. Don't get me wrong, I love this Blue Rat, but in games where he's the only playable character, you'll notice how everyone else is pretty much relegated to the sidelines, becoming more or less glorified cheerleaders. Having multiple playable characters lets Sonic Team craft more intricate stories where more of the series cast is involved. Think back to SA2 or 06, say what you want about these stories, but they both have this sense of scale that I attribute to the large cast of playable characters. That being said, I don't think they've ever properly executed on that idea. The classics had the right idea, having everyone work off the same core gameplay, just giving each character their own unique abilities, but story-wise they don't use them in any interesting way. For the most part, they're just non-canon bonuses, which is fine for a classic game. The adventure games opt to give each character their own story, but now each character's gameplay is radically different from Sonic's. Got me spending 20 minutes hunting down emeralds in a game where the rest of the levels are over in 5. I've had my fun with some of these extra playstyles, but in most cases I'd rather just be playing as Sonic. But I don't think that's an issue inherently wrong with playable characters, just how Sonic Team chose to go about it for most of the 3D era. The best approach would be to build everybody off of Sonic. Everyone should be able to boost, everyone can fight, but give them something to distinguish them from the rest of the characters. Then you can build a story with those multiple playable characters in mind. And it wouldn't be a chore to switch characters because they're all fundamentally the same. You're probably thinking, ain't that what they did with the Final Horizon? Well, for the most part, yeah. I'd say playing as these three is about as fun as running around as Sonic once they're all fully maxed out. Making us start from square one with each character this late in the game was such a bad move. Why does a guy named Knuckles need to learn how to throw hands? Why do we need to learn how to parry or stomp? Those were basic actions given to us at the start of the game. Instead of getting rid of this already pointless leveling system, they introduce a whole new event that pretty much hands you what you need to reach max level. Really makes you wonder why we need this system in the first place. But they ain't too bad once they're all maxed out. I said my piece on the combat, but for the general gameplay, I thought they were all pretty fun. Knuckles was by far the worst with his delayed glide and wide turning. But after the most recent patch, I'd say he's about as fun as Amy and Tails. Still wish he could climb any surface though. Amy's bounce is super satisfying to pull off, and her little tarot card motorcycle is such a fun idea. Sure, it's goofy, but it's a fun type of goofy. I probably would have replaced her melee attacks with hammer strikes that lead into a hammer spin. Not sure why that wasn't their first thought. It seems like the obvious choice, but sure, I guess fortune cards work too. Tails' lack of a homing attack seemed like an unnecessary limitation. Like, how you gonna give Amy and Knuckles one but draw the line at Tails? Other than that, I thought he was pretty great. The little flight delay where he kind of charges up his tails actually felt pretty satisfying, and giving him the Cyclone as a power boost was such a sick idea. It completely breaks all the level design, but I don't really care. I still had a ton of fun with it. Though I definitely add the ability to turn off power boost when you're at max range. It can be annoying when you're just trying to do a normal boost. For the most part, I'd say they're on the right track with multiple playable characters. Their combat and story inclusion feels pretty half-baked, but that probably has more to do with the fact that they were added in free post-launch updates. If the next game is built with multiple characters in mind, it'll hopefully give each character more story prominence and a more fleshed out combat system. So that's how I'd approach the inclusion of multiple playable characters. Now I want to highlight some specific characters I'd want to see in an open zone game. You already know I gotta talk about my boy Shadow. Easily the most popular character behind Sonic himself. They'd be dumb not to give him a major role in the next game, especially considering Sonic Movie 3. I expect his combat to make use of his Chaos abilities, striking enemies with Chaos Spear, destroying crowds with Chaos Blast, and if y'all wanted to sneak a gun in there, I wouldn't be opposed. For his max boost, you can can give him his iconic motorcycle. Just imagine exploring a huge open zone city as Shadow the Hedgehog on a motorcycle. If they're willing to add the Cyclone and a tarot card broomstick thing, surely something like this could make the cut. I do think stuff like that should require a lot more skill points and probably be locked behind the game's last zone. Story-wise, I think they'd be wise to take cues from Sonic Prime. That's arguably Shadow's best appearance and easily my favorite part of the show. He's quiet, reserved, and a little bit of a hothead, but you can tell he cares. He's not brooding in some corner crossing his arms being the caricature the internet has defined him as. He's the real ultimate life form that hasn't been seen since 06. I might be the only person on the planet who doesn't have a problem with Shadow's current voice actor. I'd argue his work in Forces is one of the character's best portrayals.
Looks like this won't be your garden variety recon mission. What is it, Rouge? What happened? Too easy. Let's hope you at least put up a good fight.
Put some respect on Kirk, he does a great job. But speaking of Eggman family creations with a black and red color scheme, we got Sage, Eggman's adorable AI kid. Sage has a lot of potential as a playable character. Seeing as she's likely Eggman's right-hand man at this point with full access to all of his creations, I imagine she'd have the ability to take over enemies and take on their abilities. It'd kind of work like the capture system from Mario Odyssey. Sage would hack into certain robots and gain their abilities. She could fly around as a buzz bomber or zoom around the map as a motobug. You could give Sage a Titan-sized boss to fight while she pilots the Egg Dragoon. That'd easily go down as one of the sickest moments in the series. There's a lot of potential in this concept. If they ever wanted to explore Sage as a playable character, this would be a cool way to do it, as an all-in-one Eggman robot. Next up, I gotta talk about my girl Blaze. She's by far my favorite character besides Sonic himself, and they've had her on the bench for 2 decades. Her last appearance in a mainline game was Generations, where she was given 30 seconds of screen time as one of Sonic's many cheerleaders. Before that, it was 06, where she's a completely different character because 06 writers said, nah, we don't care about continuity, and chose to retcon everything Rush established so Silver could have a stoic sidekick, just for them to go back on it the very next game. I want the real Blaze to make her way into a mainline game. The pyrokinetic princess of the Soul Dimension, the one us Rush fans grew up with. Her combat could make use of her pyrokinesis, taking down enemies with fire-based attacks. You could find a way to incorporate Burning Blaze either through a Titan-like boss fight, or she could have some type of ultimate where she can go burning during normal combat. She'd probably have the Soul Emeralds on her at all times, so it actually makes sense. Story-wise, I just ask that she does something. Please give us a character-defining scene fully realized in 3D. All her best moments are relegated to comic panels or visual novel cutscenes. She's long overdue for some time in the spotlight. Speaking of comics though, I think Tangle and Whisper both have a ton of potential as playable characters. Tangle already feels like she was designed with Sonic gameplay in mind, and I hope one of these next few games can explore that. Her tail could allow her to swing across the map like a furry Spider-Man. Could even incorporate some kind of physics to her movement, letting her latch onto things and use her momentum and positioning to launch to certain areas. Just imagine the platforming potential. That's not to mention what she could do during combat, using her tail in all types of fun combos. Then you got Whisper over here with potential to be what the Avatar should have been. Hover could be tied to her triple jump. She could use the cube hammer for melee attacks, then laser and rocket for more ranged gunplay. You could give her some cyberspace stages that act as little run and gun levels, kind of similar to Gamma's gameplay. Again, these would all be built off the same base gameplay style. It'd add variety without completely changing the core gameplay. I want the cyberspace stages to highlight their unique abilities while not losing sight of the game's appeal. And by the way, I'm not saying put all these guys in the same game. I don't even think that would work story-wise. Like how you gonna get Blaze from the Soul Dimension and then, you know, Tangle and Whisper and then Shadow? Like that wouldn't even work. These are just some brief character pitches. As long as it's not just Tails, Amy, and Knuckles, I'll be happy. Don't be afraid to use more of your cast. There's so much more than these 3. I'd consider putting some of them on the bench for a game or 2, especially considering how Frontiers ended. It's time to give some other characters a chance to shine. And with that, I've pretty much said everything I need to say. Sorry if you got a little wish listy towards the end there, but I hope you have a decent idea of what I'd want to see out of an open zone Sonic. Really hone in on what makes his gameplay fun. Ditch all the pointless fluff and make room for more movement-based challenges. Zones that perfectly blend creative visuals and fun level design. I want more in-depth combat and levels more consistent with the open zone. All backed by an engaging story that uses these characters and their world to the absolute fullest. I see so much potential in this series, and I want nothing more than to see it succeed. If there's one thing I can say about Frontiers, it's that for all its flaws, it gives me hope for the future of Sonic, something I hadn't had in a really long time. Anyways, that's all for now. Take care of yourselves, look after each other, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.